welcome to yet another Hoops and Dreams preview show. On this episode, we'll be previewing Tuesday's QPR against Coventry. That's an evening fixture, and we'll trying to keep me on the straight and narrow as usual is George. He's not doing a very good job so far. Great to see you, George.
Yeah, great to see you as always, Brian.
Let's start by reviewing our last match, which was another Tuesday game. That was an adventure at Loftus Road, and that ended QPR 2, Blackburn 1. Uh, Back from his bout of tonsillitis, Marty fielded a strong squad that featured Cook and Edwards at the back, with Frey up front and Sato and Smith on the wings. But the interesting change for me was the placement of Chair behind Frey. Did you feel this was a good use of Chair in the central role, George?
100%. I think ever since the times when Willett was at the club as well, I've always loved Chair in the middle. And I remember when we were Warburton, we'd always play two people behind the striker, and that would mean that Chair was more central. And I think that was a time where he was really good for us. And his chance creation is just much better. I feel like when he plays out on the left, he sometimes gets a bit isolated and he hasn't got the pace to beat someone. And necessarily, he's not the trickiest player. He's just got great delivery and good set piece work. And he's great on the ball, and that's his biggest asset. So when he's in the middle, he can drop in to pick up the ball. So yeah, I think it was a great move and something that I've been calling for a while, to be honest. You can see that on the left, he just sometimes gets a bit isolated and out of the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. I felt he offered a really good alternative path through Blackburn's goal area and was effective in there. However, I guess we're left wondering whether this was a solution that Marty and Xavi chose just against Blackburn, or whether it's something for the future. What do you reckon?
I really hope it's something for the future, but with the attacking options that we have coming back in now, it's something that it is good to have that versatility, because although I'm saying that Chair isn't as great out on the left, he can still play there and still do a decent job. So it's where we can adapt based on what teams we're playing against. Because if you feel like you're coming up against a team where you need to pack the big midfield a bit more, you could always play the three centre midfielders, which he has been. I know Morgan's been playing in there and he's been playing in front of Varane and Field. But if you decide that you're coming up against a team where perhaps having Chair in there adds up that bit more creativity, then so be it. And it's good to have options.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I was really impressed by the large number of shots on target, which obviously Chair contributed to, and the team's desire to recycle when they were blocked going forward. Rather than sort of punt it forward and hope for the best. There were some good performances there too. I mean, Frey, who I think probably had his best performance yet, maybe, was a constant thorn in their side. Dunn, who played reliably throughout, with his usual dedication, even if he was perhaps disconcerted, over the week by the transfer window. And Paul, who played a lot better than recent games. And I've got to mention Edwards, who showed great maturity in his play. Any players that I've missed, George?
No, I think you covered most of them. To be honest with you, I think Saito from the start added a bit of energy as well, which was really good to see. But no, I completely agree with you. I think Edwards did really well. For someone who's still so young and hasn't, people forget he's never played Championship football before. He looks just so comfortable from the back, and there was a time in the first half when he'd almost run all the way to their 18-yard box.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of one of them centre backs who bring, you see it in the Premier League, one who brings it out and is just so composed on the ball. So I think he's a really good addition for us. And I completely agree with you in terms of Jimmy Dunn, where his mind could easily could have been focused on other things. But I think he realised that the window's done and he's with us for the rest of the year at least. Whether he signs a contract or not is not in our hands. That's completely up to him and the club. But it's good because we've had players in the past where, with 6 months left on their contract, probably not going to sign it. They just stop trying. For example, I'll give you a brighter Zoe Samuel. Before he signed a pre-contract agreement, I think, to join Fenerbahce, and you could really tell the difference in that last 6 months of the season. So I never thought Jimmy was going to be like that, but just to prove that at Blackburn was really good to see.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, Willock's another example that you could use as well. Anyway, should we have included perhaps in our list of those who really did well? Should we have included Chair perhaps, because he did make a number of probing runs and did have good shots on goal?
Oh, no, I completely agree. I thought because we mentioned Cher before and I wouldn't bring him up again, but I I honestly thought, Chair, yeah, for me, I'm sure we'll say it later, but it's my man of the match. And I know the club gave it to Edwards, and quite a few people discussed Edwards as man of the match. But for me, I think it was just so creative, and I think he was our biggest outlet. And it was one of them cases again of Chair was having a good game, and that reflected across the whole team. So I think. Yeah, he looked so much more comfortable in the middle, and it was another great assist. We're forgetting that it's another one of them where it's just a great cross, isn't it? And it's just a consistency of crossing as well, because we have at least one of them every single game. So yeah, it's good. And for me, he was man of the match. So
Oh, good. I'm glad I mentioned him then because yeah, I was going to skip over him and say my man of the match was Ronnie Edwards, which you're right. A lot of other people seem to agree with that. And I know he made a fluffed clearance at one stage, but otherwise I thought he controlled the Blackburn attackers very well and still seemed to have, as you said, that confidence to surge forward with the ball. I only wish he was going to be here next season. I really do. Right. Anyway, the win against Blackburn moved us up to 13th place on 41 points. Of course, we were still a game ahead of the others who were, perhaps playing this weekend, but only Millwall could actually overtake us, and they were busy elsewhere. Um, so 13th we remained. If the championship ended now, George, would you be happy on 13th or would you want more?
I'd be really happy. I think I mentioned on the last preview that the position that we were in a couple of months ago, I would have snapped your hand off for 13th. And it's not just the 13th. I think we haven't discussed since the end of the transfer window, but you've got teams around us like West Brom and Middlesbrough splashing millions on loans and strikers and players who are going to get you out of this division. And that's just a real reality check for us and the position that we are in amongst these clubs who are also pushing for that fifth and sixth spot. Um, I'm not saying that is completely off the cards because with QPR, who knows what can happen. But I think that you look at the windows that the likes of West Brom had, bringing in Adam Armstrong from Southampton, and then you look at us where we focus quite heavily on youth in January. I think it's just a reality check of where we really are, and I'd be completely happy with 13th, considering where we were and the fact that so many of us were thinking, "Oh, is this the year that we're going to go down? Is this the end of Marty and everything?" It's just a completely different situation now for us all. So yeah, I completely take 13th.
That sounds good to me. Okay, let's move on now to previewing our next championship clash. That, as I said, is another midweek one. This time it's an away game at Coventry on Tuesday, and they sit just one place above us on 12th position in the championship. Coventry have got, well, they've had four wins on the trot, which is pretty good going, but unfortunately they then lost 2-0 to Leeds. Still not a bad record though. And on Saturday they were in FA Cup action, I should mention, against Ipswich, which sadly they also lost. Um, QPR, as we all know, has also had four wins out of the last six games, and we've won against top sides. And in fact, we actually are one of the top sides that have won since 2025 started. So we're sort of up there at the top in the listed ones as a really good winning side. So got to be optimistic, I guess, George, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we have nothing else to do apart from be optimistic. I know that we had the result against Millwall, which I said that we could have. I feel like that we still could have won that game, and then the Sheffield Wednesday at home, where it seems like they just always seem to get the better of us. But then I think we rebounded really well against Blackburn. I was worried going into the game because I thought that we would just potentially get out tacticked, out physicality wise, and if they got a goal early, it was just going to be a 1-0. But no, they completely. It was the other way around for in that game. So I think you look forward to Coventry, and you're completely right what you said. They went on a run with four wins in a row. I know they lost their last two, but that's to Ipswich and Leeds, one of them being in the cup. But no, Frank Lampard's come in, and yeah, it's a weird one because obviously he did awfully at Chelsea, didn't he? And I really don't. He is Chelsea, and that's why I absolutely hate the guy. But in terms of stats for them, they're second in the league for expected goals. So I think. they live up to their reputation of they've got good attacking players, haven't they? They got good strikers in Sims, Thomas Asante. I know Haji Wright's been injured recently, but they create a lot of chances. But one thing that was shocking for me is that they've missed 58 big chances this year, which is actually first in the league. So for me, bear in mind the strikers they have with Sims and Asante, that's just shocking. But no, they've got good championship players. They bought in Grimes in the window. I think it was for 4 million from Swansea, and he finally left Swansea. Um, but he's a top player. He's a top championship player. So I'm expecting it to be a very tough game.
Yeah, I think you're right to mention Asante because I think I'm right in saying that he's achieved 3 goals in 4 games, which is something only QPR could only dream of, really. But he is amazingly not their top scorer. As you mentioned Haji Wright. Until he had his ankle injury, he was sitting on 7 goals, and nobody else has got that far yet. So they seem to be a bit like QPR, spreading the load amongst the players. Nobody's got a great amount and is an out and out recognised goal scorer. It seems to be lots of them that we should be looking out for. Um, it's unlikely that Haji Wright will start against us because he is coming back from injury, but he may feature as a sub, I guess. Are there any other players that we should look out for, George?
I think they got good players sprinkled all throughout their team. They got one from Huddersfield in the window, Jack Redoni, and I thought that was a great pickup. He did really well for Huddersfield last year. I know they ended up getting relegated, but he was that spark in their team and he was constantly creating chances. But what you just mentioned completely did shock me when I read about it. The fact of how spread out their goal scorers really are, because going into the season, people were backing Coventry for playoffs and because of their striker threat. But it just seems like Sims and Asante aren't scoring as much, which completely shocked me because I hadn't really been keeping too much of a track on Coventry. They're kind of a team who went under my radar. But I've looked at them and yeah, it just shocked me. But no, they've got players of quality sprinkled throughout their whole team and championship experience as well. So it's going to be a really tough game, especially I usually say sometimes that if teams lose a couple on the trot before playing us, it's a good thing. But I think this is potentially a bad thing because they'll look to bounce back in a game which they might see as more winnable, obviously, than a Leeds and Ipswich. So yeah, very tough game.
Yeah, and you glossed over Frank Lampard, mentioning his stint there. I guess we should look at how things have gone since he arrived. Do you think that they would have been as high up in the table without Frank Lampard?
I don't know. I think they massively underachieved at the start of the season,
Hmm.
in terms of the people were backing them to get playoffs and everything. And then obviously Mark Robbins has left, gone to Stoke. And then Lampard's coming in. I thought that anyone who could get any sort of half decent manager should be able to get a tune out of that Coventry team. And I don't rate Frank Lampard as a manager much at all, to be honest with you. But no, you can't argue with stats, and they won 4 on the bounce before their 2 losses. They've been playing better, so yeah, hopefully, yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't really know. Yeah, it's not a great manager in my eyes, and I think any half decent championship manager should be able to get a decent tune out of that Coventry team, especially with the quality that they have. And it's like they spent money as well. Ever since they sold Gokares for a big sum, people before that they were going under the thing of we'll bring in players for the 1 million, the 2 million, and develop them. But ever since they've sold Gokares, they've been bringing in players for decent sums. So yeah, they massively underachieved at the start of the year, and bringing Lampard in, he's got a tune out of him, but I still don't think he's that much of a decent manager.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I think let's wait and see.
Hmm.
Leaving aside our predictions, George, this is another midweek fixture, just like Blackburn. Should it be any harder or easier than last Tuesday's?
I think it will be harder than Blackburn. One, because it's away from home, and I think I would have been crazy saying that at the start of the year. Bear in mind how bad our home form was at the start of the year. But no, it's a tough game, and we've got a game 3 days later as well against Derby, which really doesn't help with this Sky schedule, doesn't it? But you can think of the positives. We haven't played over the weekend. I'm pretty sure Coventry, yeah, we've mentioned that they played Ipswich on the weekend, so they would have had less rest than us. And I think they played pretty much their full strength team in that game. So hopefully we'll have fresher legs. But yeah, I've been saying it. It's going to be a very tough game. Coventry, I've known to be decent at home. They got. I actually don't mind Coventry's ground. I think they got a good atmosphere. I like. Yeah, it's one of the better ones in the league, and it's one of the better away days. So I think, yeah, just it's going to be a difficult game, but I think it's nothing that we should fear. We've been playing really good football at the moment, and when we played them back, I think it was in October. I think we were unlucky not to win that game.
Yeah,
Where it was 1-0 and we weren't playing well then. So you look at the difference between now and then, and yeah, I think we got a good chance, but it's going to be difficult.
that's fair enough. Um, it's an away game, and that just might tip the balance, I suppose. But I suspect the defining item will be how well we close down their strikers. And for that, we'll need to have the best back four possible. And for all those defenders to always be switched on, of course. So that said, who would be in your back four, George?
For me, I would stick with the same as Blackburn, to be honest with you. I think having Jimmy Dunn back in that side just added that defensive balance. We mentioned it at Millwall, the team looked like they'd lost their right back and lost such a pivotal part of their team. So I think I would stick with the same back four. I think I don't see Marty taking Edwards out, which is a good thing. Bear in mind how well we played against Blackburn. I think Cook, he's just that leadership role as well, isn't he? So and I think he looked better against Blackburn. We criticised him against Millwall for potentially not being up to match sharpness, which is understandable. We hadn't played for a few weeks. So I think, yeah, I think he'll stick with the same back four, and I certainly wouldn't complain.
Yeah, I'm with you on this because Steve Cook didn't quite look match fit. He didn't look quite there. But is there an alternative to him available? I mean, if JCS was there or Morrison, fully fit and match sharp, then you might say, well, okay, we'll give Steve Cook a rest. He can come on for the last 30 minutes or something. But quite honestly, I think given the circumstances, I think I'd play the same back four as you. And I'm assuming you would include Dunn and Powell on the side as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, in midfield, I would start with Varane, Field, and Chair if it were me, and I would do this only to rest Morgan because I think he's been superb, but I think he probably does need a bit of a rest. Who would you start with, George?
I completely agree with you on this one. I
Ah,
think, yeah, I'll bring Varane back into the team, and I completely agree with what you said. I think against Blackburn, Morgan looked a bit leggy at times. I don't think it was really his game because, especially in the midfield area against players like Travis and Buckley, they were just looking to foul you and make it into a physical brawl. So I don't think it was his game. But no, and I'd certainly keep Cher in the middle. So yeah, I go Varane, Field, and Cher. Although I will say that for the 30-minute cameo the other day, Colback did do well
he
when he
did.
came on. So I wouldn't be shocked if Marty tries to bring him in some ways. But he even mentioned in his post-match interview that he's still trying to get back to fitness. So I don't expect that, and I think he'll go for Ramfield and Chair.
Yeah, I think the rotation that he's doing so far, he's not making any mistakes that I can see anyway. So that just leaves the attackers, George, and I would be looking to utilise Alfie Lloyd or more likely Rayan Coley as an impact sub. And I'd start with Frey again, who did so well against Blackburn. And on the wings, you've got an interesting dilemma. You've got Smith, Sato, sorry, and Yang. All of those to choose from, two out of three. I would probably, for the same reason I said for Morgan, I would rest Smith for 60 minutes and play Yang instead on the opposite wing to Sato. What about you, George?
I was about to say that as well, Brian. It seems like seems like you're reading my mind today. I think again against Blackburn and in the last few games, Smith's looked a bit leggy as well, and we praised him completely for being a massive part of our turnaround and how some of the coaches at the club got the better out of him. And I'm not saying that he's dropped off at all. I just think it'll be good to give him a rest and see what Yang can do from the start. And I think he'll keep with Saito. The only thing is, I think up front. I don't think he'll start with Frey. I think Frey potentially at the moment showing that he's a better player at home. And he's certainly scoring more goals at home. So I think he'll look to do that on Friday night against a Derby team who I don't think they play great football. Who knows who their manager's going to be, by the way, for that game. But they're not exactly. I think they'll look to utilise the physical ability as well, especially from set pieces. So I think he'll start Frey against Derby. And I think he'll go with Lloyd up front against Coventry. I know we lost the game against Millwall, but I thought he did really well. So I think he'll look to do something similar.
Okay, that's fair enough. Let's go on to our club news. And in our last podcast, we talked about the players who came in or departed during the transfer window. And I wanted to widen this topic a bit to talk about the new arrivals that were coming into the development squad. Now we've got, gosh, now here we're going to have trouble with pronunciations, I'm sure. J.O. Henrique, better known as Esquerri I think I got that right. An 18-year-old left back. Harvey Vale, I can say that one, an attacking midfielder. And 15-year-old Callum Brunson, who's probably heading for the under-18s rather than the dev squad, but I should mention him anyway as a defender. And Archie O'Brien, 17-year-old midfielder who was playing for Hertford Town's first team. So that's four pretty good arrivals, I feel. And is this a sign that the club is looking towards future replacements for the first team? Or do you think this is an admission that the young players coming through from the academy into the development squad just aren't that good enough at the moment?
I think it's a bit of both, really. We've been saying it for the last few years that especially before this season, that our academy weren't producing good enough players, and we didn't really have an example of someone who fully came through our youth setup and then into the first team. The more recent example being Brian Colley, but before that, you didn't really have one because even Eze, who was our best academy product, we signed him quite late on. He didn't develop since a very young age with us. So I think that's why the club are doing this, and I think it's the complete right method. I'm going to try to pronounce his name as well. Escudinha, I'm going to go for.
Okay.
Um, I think no, I think he's a really good signing for the future, and I know he's initially joining the devs team, but it gives you that backup to Powell potentially if he gets injured and
Yep.
if we need it. I know it was reported that Barcelona were looking at him in the summer, so he's obviously a decent prospect. I don't know much about the 15-year-old to be honest with you. I saw that he signed for us, but I completely agree with you in that I think he'll go into the under 18s team, join as a scholar, and then go on from there. Archie O'Brien's a really interesting one for me because
Hmm.
I know people from the college that I go to and the academy that I go to. I know people who 17, 18 and they play step three of non-league, and Archie O'Brien's been playing step four of non-league since 16. And I'll tell you what, that's really impressive. I don't know the difference in gap between that but it's massive. The gap between step four non-league and championship football is huge. I know because I'm hopefully playing step five football next year. But either way, it's really impressive to be playing that much football in a team that is non-league and it's men's football at the end of the day. So he's obviously had the experience playing with the physicality. So it's very impressive, and it'll be good to see how he progresses. And then Harvey Vale is certainly one really exciting for the future. Um, He's disappointed that he can't play this season, and obviously the club saw something in the medical, and I think that's the reason why the deal took so long to go through. But no, he's someone who he's got real promise, and yeah, it'll be good to see him next season and see how he does. Bear in mind he had a good loan in League One, and we've talked about him before, so I think yeah, real good signings, and I think it shows that the club are looking more towards the future rather than this season. As I mentioned earlier, clubs around us obviously going for the playoffs. But I think we've taken the approach of if it happens, it happens. But we're focusing very heavily on the future, and it's good to see.
No, yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, I think we have got to be optimistic, but not too optimistic. Um, Talking of optimism, I would expect the fortunes of the development squad to now improve, obviously, as these guys bed in, and we should look forward to a good few results from them, I hope. Anyway, I should mention that the goalkeeper Connor Clark from the dev squad, he's gone out on a short-term loan to Erith Town, so I wish him well. In fact, he's the sixth development squad player to go out on loan, as we already have out Alex Aurora, Murphy Cooper, Ridwan Hassan is there as well, and Kamoko Kiyatoa Turi. Why do we not get any simple names? And Mateus Solomon. So we've got a load out on loan at the moment. It's got to be aiding their development, doesn't it, George?
No, 100%. And I always speak about the importance of loans. And yeah, it's even at the high level of championship football. At the start of the season, I was very full on about sending Ryan Colley out on loan. And I know that he's looked good in our first team and he's looked up to the championship level. But obviously at the start of the season, we hadn't seen that. So I would have liked to see him go out on loan to a League One side, even if it was just the 6 months of January, and see how he did starting every single week in a decent League One side. And then we've seen it with progressions before. I mentioned him earlier, but Eze, he went out on loan to Wickham, and that completely made made his career going forward. I think Gareth Ainsworth said it he was there with him about how well he did, and they could just tell how good he was from the moment he went in. So I always talk about loans, and I think it's the most important way for a player to develop. Because it just gives you that experience of men's football, especially for these youngsters. So, yeah, even at the development squad level, if these youngsters go out on loan to a step two, step three non-league side, it's just all about getting you used to the physicality, isn't it? No, they know that you're good enough for the level. It's just the men's football side. So yeah, it's good, and I think loans are really, really important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I should mention at this point, well done to Charlie Kelman for his match yesterday. Excellent. Got a 9 rating in one of the papers I was looking at. Um, okay, George, it's prediction time. What is your prediction for Tuesday's match against Coventry?
Once again, I would love to show a lot of optimism, and I'd love to be really positive, and I feel like I have been, but I think we haven't drawn a game in a while, and I think this is the perfect one to draw. So I'm going to go for a. I don't think it'll be goalless, but I'm going to go 1-1.
We stopped a two-match losing streak with a determined win against Blackburn last week, so I do not feel that this will be as tough a prospect as perhaps we might have thought it would be. Um, now we're answering any early goals against us with our own. We battle for balls in the goal area and we're attacking set pieces really well. That said, this is a tough opponent and it is away from home. So I too am going for a score draw and I too are going for 1-1. So you heard it here, folks. We both agree. This is not usual. that, that's it for this preview podcast from Hoops and Dreams. James and Dave will be back next with a preview of our home match against Derby on Friday the 14th, Valentine's Day. I shall be there for that one in Block E. What about you, George?
Yeah, I shall be there for that one. I wouldn't miss it. I would never miss it.
Okay, well, I'm sure whatever the result on Valentine's Day, we'll all be still there continuing to love QPR. It just remains for me to thank George, as you always, for joining me to impart his knowledge and opinions. And thank you all for watching. Come on, you R's.
How many you ours?